there are people to think that we're meeting about them. So, and we do have a couple of apologies, which I know formally, but Alan has got COVID and Jane's in the hospital without COVID. But when she got there, they realised that she had it, which was part of why she was in there. And Sophie's got it. So anyway, with Jane in hospital, he's got a bit of a chance for a break. So if you know him well enough, give him a call, another call. And Twee's daughter Mia has COVID, so she's out of action. Hopefully she doesn't catch it as well.
Did confess to the chocolate chip.
Oh, we're up and running.
Probably did not stop the joke.
I don't believe you.
True story.
Right. Welcome to the members and staff and members of the gallery. Very fine on the gallery tonight. But to those who come, they'll be very welcome. And then opening the meeting for the 26th of July, City of Prospects Council meeting, I acknowledge that we're on the traditional country of the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains region. We pay our respect to elders past and present. We recognise and respect their cultural heritage, beliefs and relationships with the land. We acknowledge that they are of continuing importance to the Kaurna people living today. I also read you the council pledge. We seek wisdom and understanding as we face the duties of our united task, praying for the peace and prosperity of our city. Please be seated. Alrighty, on leave we have Neil, but apologies, we do have Councillor Wynne and Councillor Harris, as just mentioned. Item 4 is declaration by members of a conflict of interest. I will declare I have a conflict or potential conflict with item 10.3. I'm considering nominating for that Go-Rock role. It does come with a small allowance, so I'll leave the meeting and hand over to Deputy Mayor. Staff have advised me that we may want to consider declaring a conflict, Deputy Mayor and myself, for our role as voting for the Local Government Finance Association annual general meeting. I haven't before, as we're part of a fairly large class, so I'm interested why is that. And we don't have an interest in that one at all. Is there a reason to advise that one?
GFA.
Yes.
That's there is a remuneration allowance.
Oh, if we nominate for a board
If you
role,
nominate.
I have no intention of nominating for that, so I won't declare that one. Anyone
I
can
also
nominate
have
for
no
that. No intention. Okay, so if someone does have an intention of nominating, we'll need to declare a conflict at that time. Confirmation of minutes for the meeting on the 28th of June. There were no questions that I saw in the email stream, so somebody happy to confirm them as a true record of that meeting. Deputy Mayor, do you wish to speak to it?
No, thanks.
Do a seconder. Christine, Councillor Barnett, would you like to speak to it? Any further discussion? If none, all those in favour? Against is carried unanimously. Thank you. Public question time. I'm not sure I'm speaking to say we have 15 minutes and 3 minutes per question, and there's a lot of rules. Are there any? I don't know. Someone might be shy, hiding. There's none online. There's none been asked beforehand, so we have no questions from the public. And I will move on to the next section then, which is petitions. Again, we have nil. Deputations nil. Questions without notice at item 9. Do we have any questions without notice? Councillor DeBacker.
I'll sit and so Sam, if that's okay. So there's 2 questions I'd like to ask, probably through the chair to the CEO. So one is the current status of the creperie downstairs. Today I noticed there was actually no, I suppose, taking off of the area, information about what's happening, dates or anything like that. Can I get an update through the chair, please?
See ya.
So through you, Mayor Lachlan, we've been in ongoing discussions with the proprietor of the creperie. The proprietor of the creperie is suffering some degree of financial distress, which is
this
preventing
something
him.
that has to be confidential?
Not necessarily. It's certainly not been expressed to us with the expectation to remain confidential. Certainly in terms of the detail of anything that might come of these discussions, were it to continue in a conflict-driven manner, if I can put it that way, then yes. But for now, we've been very clear with the proprietor of the creperie that our expectations are that we see progress and a genuine intent to progress to refit and also to address various other challenges we've had in our relationship, which I can't go into in public. If that's not able to be remedied, then council will be forced to look elsewhere for another tenant. Now, again, none of that's confidential, but it is an ongoing discussion with the proprietor of the Gregory, and it's ongoing.
Second question.
Yes, so in regards to, I had inquiries today about the workshop proposed for August 9th, I think, about the car parking situation, and I know there's plenty of people in the community very interested in that. So through the chair, when will we have a confirmation of that agenda?
Yes, so right now that workshop is scheduled for the 9th of August, and staff are diligently working towards that date. I have every expectation it will be on the 9th of August, but I can't confirm that for certain until Monday of next week. So my expectation is I'll be able to communicate with members solidly on Monday that that workshop either will or will not be going ahead on the 9th of August. And in any event, we do plan to push that workshop ahead as soon as staff can be prepared with the 3 items that we want to bring to members that as part of that workshop. One is a draft parking policy that draws in the parking principles that members adopted back in February. The second is a discussion around the Village Heart parking study that has been commissioned and finalised. And the third is to go through the survey results that arose out of the recent trial of resident parking permits on the western side of Bayindy.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions that I just
Good segue. My question is, has been, I'm sure quite a few people around the room are aware of the development proposals at Rotary School, which are in a couple of parts. One is the hall, and then the other one is a master plan for the whole site by the looks of it. So what happens within their 4 walls, I guess, is between them and the planning assessment processes. But what happens outside those 4 walls, being in the streets around the school, is something which impacts our broader community. So my question is, can a master plan of that nature go ahead without consultation with council, given the likely significant impact on not only local residents, but people more broadly around this area, with increased traffic movements and the issues that we see elsewhere already? Can they just go ahead and do something and then we have to deal with the issue ourselves, or do they have to consult with us on the impact?
My understanding is that the code doesn't require any assessment of a master plan. It only requires assessment of the development application. I think that's a simple answer on CEO. Over to you.
Honestly, through you, Mayor Lachlan, I have to take that on notice for a range of reasons. I'm unfamiliar with the precise issue at hand, and I'm not confident enough with the code itself to provide an informed response. And I wouldn't ask the director to do the same under the circumstances. However, we could take that on notice and provide some process advice back to members in the next couple of days.
Thank you.
Yeah. Pretty sure we don't. There's no process for assessing a master plan in the code that I'm aware of. So I'd like to see the answer to that as well. Should they wish to undertake stage 1, which requires a building to be proposed for a site within, goes through the development assessment process.
Yeah.
Any other questions about notice, Councillor?
Yes. Can I just seek an update, please? And if it needs to take on notice, respect that as well. Obviously, with Paul already taking on another role, just when the community reference group is planning to meet again for the Broadview, I guess, development and hub at Broadview Oval, and just to seek some assurances that that project's still on track, please.
Yep. So yeah.
Mr. Valena.
Through you. Yes. A new project manager's been brought on board, been in the seat for a couple of weeks, certainly working through the design elements, and we're actually meeting internally next week as a PCG in terms of the project governance moving forward. I understood the community reference group had sort of finished its responsibilities, and effectively it was about communicating with that group moving forward as opposed to one meeting. But that's something that we discussed as part of the PCG.
So we're going to add to that. We are approaching a point where 70% design will be ready. As members are aware, the development application has been lodged, and the process of assessment is bleeding out those sort of finer points around the design. we do expect at some point that we'll need to circle back to the community reference group
Yeah.
to address things like materials and the like. However, given the tightness of the budget, the capacity to influence outcomes as we get closer to the end may become more limited. So again, just making sure that there is a suitable degree of the expectations are at an appropriate level. But yes, I do think we'll be coming back to the CRG at some point. It's just as we get to that point in design where we get to that
Yeah.
stage of materials and selection, that sort of thing.
I thought as long as that's communicated to them, I think they'll probably understand it all.
Okay,
Further question possible?
sure.
For the last couple of months, the petrol station at North East Road and Rutherglen Avenue has been closed. There's been fencing put up. And now it appears that there's graffiti appearing on the wall. This is on North East Road near Rutherglen, yeah. And I just wanted to find out if any staff are aware. Has that station permanently closed? Has it been upgraded and refitted? What's going on there? If we are aware of that at all, what's happening to that station?
I'm not, we actually have two, the other one's on the main North Road and the corner of Johns Road. Let's see,
Mr. Pearce, unless you have some insight into that. No, I'm sorry, I'd have to take that on notice.
If you could, yeah, because I've had complaints about people illegally jumping fences there and it's a few issues. It's quite unsightly.
very difficult sites for the quick service stations. Tanks in the ground, likely contamination, they can sit there for years, so let's find out what we can do to help. Okay, any other questions without notice? That being the case, thank you for those. We now move on to reports for decision. The first one is 10.1, local government reforms behavioural management framework policy consultation. The report is there, recommendations on page 4 with a proposed response to the LGA detailed on the forms they requested us to fill out from page 64. Somebody happen to read it in this current form. Councillor Barnett, could you speak to it?
Yes, I think we did quite a thorough input on this in our workshop. So I recommend the motion.
Thank you. I have a seconder. If you may, you should speak to it.
Only briefly to say that I didn't think it was fantastically worded in parts, but apart from that, it seems like a reasonable representation for where we should be heading. So we have the support as well.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Debate? If not, Councillor Barnett, we should sum up your excellent opening speech.
No, thanks. I'll close with my excellent closing.
Well done. That concludes debate. All those in favour? Yes, it's carried unanimously. Thank you. 10.2, the LGFA 2022 annual general meeting, attendance and motions, recommendations on page 67. I just ask if anyone intends to nominate for consideration as a board member of the LGFA. No, if there was, I'd suspend meeting procedures, but I can't see any nods or interest at all. Okay, so therefore the recommendations, part 1 and part 2, we don't need the nominate section there. So if someone having moved part 1 and part 2 as they are presented and now on the screen. Councillor Barnett, should you speak to it?
No.
Okay, do I have a seconder? Councillor Tobacco, put in just first, would you speak to it? Any further debate?
Just to, I know it's got to be a nuisance, but with this one, there's no need, if you're attending a conference, to declare any conflict is there for the financial. It used to be.
No, there's no fee or any remuneration
Okay.
for this one at all.
That's fine, yeah.
Yeah,
It's more covered, but I can support both of you doing it.
thank you. Very important meeting, but there's no, you know, it's to all our benefit, not the attendees.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you. Any further debates? Councillor Barnett, wish to sum up?
No.
That concludes the debate. All those in favour? Yes, it's carried unanimously. Thank you. Next item is 10.3. They suggested I would like to be nominated for the position, but I'll now vacate the chair to enable that process. I will. I'll go behind the sound wall.
Kind of silence.
Deep down. Deep down. Okay, so haven't done this for a while, but hopefully we'll get through it fairly quickly. Item 10.3. A Garrock call for nomination on the Metro Eastern Regional Grouping. Recommendations are on page 76. And there's 3 parts there. Do we need a nomination first before we discuss or vote on all the parts of the motion, CEO?
So, Mr Deputy Mayor, it may be beneficial for you to ask the chamber to suspend meeting procedures while you seek nominations.
Yep.
If you can seek a nomination and members agree on a single nomination, or if there are multiple nominations, that will affect the process going
Yep.
forward.
Okay, so I would like to seek leave to suspend meeting procedures. All those in favour? Against? Carried. So we'll seek leave to suspend until 7:24. If we should need 6 minutes. I take it that Mayor Lachlan has expressed a desire to be nominated for a position on the Garrock Metro East Regional Grouping for 2022-2024. Do we need to move and second the nomination, CEO?
So at this point, the meeting procedure is suspended, Deputy Mayor.
Okay,
You
we'll
can,
just canvass the room.
have a chat and
If we don't have any other nominations, then we're okay. Is anybody else keen to nominate?
Look, I'll speak and I'll say, the mayor has been involved with Garrett quite heavily.
Yeah.
And it really is an opportunity to collaborate with other councils and lobby to get, better things for the city of Prospect as well. So I know he's very good at that, and I think he'll be good in the role. The challenge I always find curious is that, why they do these elections before, you would think. But look, I mean, I think, obviously, David has got a strong background in his organisation, and I think he would be great for everyone in Prospect to develop.
Yeah. Any other comments? I see a hand over there.
Not a hand or a foot, no. But I'll just agree with Councillor Back, and I know there was comment 3 in the LGA notification around timing, but I find it absolutely ludicrous that this gets sorted by the end of October, and by the beginning of November, 12th of November, where we have an election result. So I find it ridiculous. But anyway, so be it.
Yeah, from the chair, I'd be happy to support the mayor's nomination for that position. So I don't think we have any dissent there at all. We can go back into session. I guess we just say that we're going to insert nominates Mayor David Lachlan for the position on the Garrock Metro East Regional Grouping for 2022 to 2024.
Yes, so Deputy Mayor, what you're after is someone to move that motion with the Mayor's name in the appropriate location, and someone to second that and vote.
Yeah, okay. Do I have a mover?
I'll move it.
Councillor Backer, would you like to speak to
Oh,
that?
just to reiterate what I've already said, I think that would be a great candidate for the position, and it'll reflect well on the city of Prospect.
Thank you, Councillor Backer. Do I have a seconder?
Second,
Councillor, would you like to speak to tonight?
basically, words in the minute.
Any further debate on the item? Okay, what does the mayor say? Councillor Backer, would you like to sum up your excellent summary?
Thank you.
Yeah, if there's no further debate, then that concludes the debate. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. So now we will be voting on the entire motion.
No, you've just done
We've just done that.
Yep.
Okay.
So
I'll call a point of order if you
quickly,
like.
you can do the rest of the agenda before he gets
Point
back.
of order,
What section is that under?
237.
237. Can you look up section 237, please? See, yeah.
No, 237. There, right.
237, sorry.
No, I didn't make sense the first time. Thank you very much. I'll, someone going to let the man know. Come back in or?
Yeah, absolutely.
Ginny.
It's kind of like, standard. I'm just doing that for the yeah, but it's every single year, there's somebody that's again. That really has. And
They do it just as finished done.
I noticed that the payments are extended years.
Absolutely.
Incoming increments.
Yeah, thank you. Members,
If you don't, you may.
Mate, you gave me my time to get a copy of the tea, let's go.
Just for himself though.
Yeah, I
I
know.
didn't see him come back with a tray.
Well, I couldn't find the trolley.
And then he's
What do I
always
do?
over.
What do I do?
Well, that's something
Okay,
else.
item 11. Settle down, settle it. Item 11, general business of an urgent nature. Is there any? No. None of that won't go too long. None of the hang out there for too long. Well, now, item 12, reports for information. The following items can be adopted on block. They will be, unless they're withdrawn. Does anybody wish to withdraw the item 12.1, the Mayoral monthly activity report? No. Great work done, Brilliant. Fantastic stuff, actually. 12.2, the investment report, 2021-22. No, the update on council's borrowing and related transactions, 21-22. No, or the audit committee meeting minutes from the 13th of July, 2022. We all that one. Wow.
It's a miracle.
That hasn't happened for a long time. Someone wish to move.
Yes, please.
Oh,
quickly.
block.
This is historic moment, he wants to move to the historic moment.
And
That's
actually,
literally
Councillor Brick, I was seconder. Councillor Rip, there's no debate on items moved on block. All those in favour? Yes, it's carried unanimously. Thank you. Boy, brings back memories. 12.1, we've done. Where are we at now?
We've done all 12.
All of 12. I'm up to item 13, which is the council member reports and briefings. Are there any?
Oh,
Down to the back.
just, yes, briefly, briefing. I attended, on Council in the community art show on the weekend. It was really well attended. It's lovely to see everyone out and about, you know, safely. And just thanks to the staff and volunteers and the community members who made it possible. So that could be passed back to the staff. That would be great. And volunteers.
Yeah, it was terrific. Yeah, thank you, staff, for getting that rolling as per normal. It was really good, feel really good vibe on the day too. Great quality stuff. Check it out. Councillor Barnett.
Yes, I concur, and I think there was a very high standard, of entries, for the community art show. It always gives me pleasure to, attend our citizenship ceremonies, as well. I think it's valuable.
Thank you very much. Any other member updates or briefings? I can move on then to item 14, motions on notice. We have three. First one, 14.1, motion on notice of motion, the pedestrian activated railway crossings, recommendations on page 107. Councillor Barnett.
Yes, I very much like to move this. I think it's a matter of safety for all our 3 railway stations that we've done our city. And I think that in reading the report, you'll see the rationale why I have brought this to us. I believe that at our Oakenham rail crossing, there's sort of one part of one of them's open. The resident down there tells me. But I think we could extend this to our Dudley Park and Islington railway station, I think as well. I think there are good reasons, as I've outlined in my rationale, why we should be advocating for this. It's my understanding that there's no real plan across the state by the Jeff state government before or current to start looking at this more seriously. So I think I'm just asking for us to strongly advocate for this. So I'm giving the motion to councillors.
Thank you. I have a second. Councillor Backer, would you speak to it?
I'll second it. I think the intent makes a lot of sense. I guess the thing would be how we do advocate through it. So would that be I suppose it's a question maybe to share that to the mover. Would that be the mayor or CEO talking to the departments, or would that be by way of a formal letter written to the department?
Should it be adopted, I would think it would be both of those.
Okay.
I'm quite happy to write a letter. I'm also quite happy to talk to the minister.
Yep.
And I'll talk more about that in a sec, but that would be the minimum.
Great, and I think it's all, you know, though public transport is fantastic, we want to encourage more people to use it. And in order to encourage more people to use it, we need to make it safe. And that includes things like passive surveillance and lighting and these kind of safety precautions, because obviously there has been an incident already. So yeah, I encourage the rest of the body to support the motion.
Thank you. Any further debate? Councillor Bridge.
I just have a question and a comment. My question is, do we know what the state government is planning in this space already? Because they may have plans for this that we aren't aware of, in which case if we advocate for something that's already decided, that would seem we're not going to use our time. So I'm just wondering if there's already a plan around this, if we know of that.
CEO.
This is Blair. For you there. The opportunity to contact the project director for the Boulevard Electrification Project, not this motion, and to find out a bit more. There are 3 activated crossings that are proposed to be installed as part of a project in our council area. There's one at Islington, the northern end, and 2 at Ovingham. That has 7 in all, so in total 4 that won't be activated. Across the left, the Boulevard Electrification Project is 13 that are being activated, and those decisions about which sites are based on a risk-based approach to as performance. That performance being the train to actually able to travel quicker in areas where it's actually activated across the places. So there will be compliant crossings put in place. So the mazes will go back, they are compliant to the standards with guidelines. There isn't, and I suppose this is a part of the advocacy, there is no funding allocated in the project for the remainder of the crossings along the left of the Boulevard Electrification or the railway to be installed. So that may be my help informed actually advocacy.
Thank you.
So on that basis, if 4 out of the 7 are being done, well, that would have to impact what we're saying to government. Otherwise, we would look somewhat silly to advocate for something that's already going in. We might want to support that bit of it and advocate for the ones that aren't happening. The second question I had is, has this been considered by the LGA? Because this is not a prospect issue. This is a statewide issue. I suspect everywhere where there's railway track. Do we know whether this has gone up at all as a motion to the LGA in the past?
No.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I know, and no, it hasn't.
Okay. So I'll just say maybe the future LGA for a future council to consider. It's probably something worth going up as an advocacy piece statewide. Because I think it's noble to put it up. I don't think we'll get much traction as a little council, but the LGA as a whole, I think will hold a lot more weight, and I think that would be useful to. So I guess I'm supportive of it to a degree. Don't know how I'm going to vote on that basis, but I just think we need to be sensible in our advocacy to government on this.
Okay. Any further debate?
No, if you Councillor Groves,
Councillor
would it help with an amendment that says something like strongly advocate to the local government association and to the South Australian state government? Would that help or just be?
Sorry, without putting words in Councillor Bridge's mouth, I think he was suggesting or foreshadowing a motion to the LGA annual general meeting to that effect.
Yeah.
To cover the whole state. The LGA can't fix the problem, but the LGA could be encouraged to that. Is that correct?
Yeah.
All right, well, leave it like that. Look, I will support it because obviously it is an issue, and I agree, Councillor railway crossing, or pedestrian crossing, sorry, up stations is a statewide issue, but obviously we're advocating for our patch of that area at the moment through this motion. But yeah, it is definitely a statewide problem, but I'm happy to support it.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Can I ask a question first of all? So if this motion is carried, what does this mean that we will do?
I think Councillor DeBacker asked that. I'm happy to answer it again.
Because I'm thinking about suggesting an amendment based on knowing exactly what we'll do.
I'm interpreting the words strongly advocate, leaving it open to the CEO and I to use a range of means that are unconstrained by other words, such as writing, telephoning, asking for a meeting with the minister should the other 2 not result in anything. That'd be what I'd see, CEO.
Yes, and through you, Mayor Lachlan, specifically in relation to the railway station crossings that have been identified. And if that's a challenge for members, then you obviously may need, you may consider alternative wording, but yeah, it's any form of advocacy related to the stations identified.
Could I suggest an amendment to the motion?
Sure.
Based on the conversations I've had, it feels like it might be prudent to investigate current status. So could we add at the start, to investigate current plans which may be in place, and depending on the outcome of that investigation, strongly advocate for the South Australian government to provide working activity, so on and so forth.
Can you just give us some help with those words? How?
Yeah, so right at the very start, kick it off with that council investigates current plans which may be in place for pedestrian crossings. Yeah, that might be in place or that are in place. Actually, probably should say that council investigates.
There's current plans for pedestrian crossing.
Councillor Larwood has the floor. He wants the amendment. Let it work out what it is.
Okay, so that council investigates if there are plans currently in place for pedestrian crossings. And if not,
The balance.
the rest of it, yeah.
Can I encourage you to use the word active protected?
Yeah, Probably should put in the below locations as well, so we're unless we don't need to provide that further direction to the staff.
I think it's pretty clear in the other locations.
Yeah.
Just in your amendment, then in front of the word pedestrian, that you use the word active protected. Sorry, get in there, thank you.
It's like the next one, word.
We don't have. So no, the intention of your amendment is that there are plans in place that we don't do any advocacy.
I don't think we need to if there are plans in place, except for if depending on how we might want to treat this at the LGA AGM to look at a statewide motion. But I do like the concept that was mentioned earlier that we might look, silly going in there shaking our fist saying we want those crossings, and if they said, well, we're already going to do them.
Okay, so you're happy with that as the wording of your amendment? I can test with the mover second in a second, but in your hands.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. It retains all the other aspects of the original motion, which I think was a good one, but I think that adds a little bit of caution to proceedings.
Yep, thank you. As I normally do, I'll ask the mover if they're happy to incorporate that change. Yes or no? Councillor Barnett, no, okay, then it becomes an amendment. Do you wish to speak any further to the amendment before I seek a second?
I guess I would only reiterate what I just said previously, and that is that I think it will be prudent to find out if there's anything happening before we go in shaking our fist at the state government.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a seconder for the amendments? Councillor Group, you've already spoken to the motion, so.
I was just waiting to fly away, sorry.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Those flies are pesky. Is there someone else who can be a second?
I haven't spoken.
Yeah, you happy to be a second?
Happy second.
Okay. Thank you. Wish to speak to it?
No, I think Councillor Group, Councillor Larwood, it makes sense that let's find out before we advocate.
Full stop.
But that is a full stop.
Okay, just check.
No,
Patent move.
full stop.
No one can do that.
Anybody else wish to speak to the amendment?
I'm going to ask a question, but I have already spoken.
You can speak again. The amendment.
I can speak
You
again.
can't move a second.
Right, okay, sorry. Can I just find out, obviously, just want to understand, if this amendment is passed, how are council going to investigate? What are council going to refer to in terms of to investigate? And I guess as part of the invest, that's point one, and point two, how are you going to sort of investigate that the plans are workable, that they're actually going to achieve the outcomes that we want them to achieve as well?
Okay, I'll take that as a question. Is that okay? Presumably CEO will deepen the questions that the director's already asked.
Yeah, I mean, so through you, Mayor Lachlan, I would say that the amendment doesn't place qualitative limits on the investigations that we're sought to do, but of course, I would be asking the director to go and have a chat with his counterparts at the department and put in writing, to the extent they can, the plans they have. And look, we'd be circulating obviously any response to members, but we wouldn't be progressing further thereafter unless members were moving another motion to push it forward. Because to my reading of that is we do the investigation. If there are plans in place, we don't proceed with advocacy, regardless of the qualitative response. We'd come back to members with that, because again, there's no real imprimatur in that motion to proceed with advocacy in the event that there are plans in place, because what we're not asking you to do is assess the quality of those plans. So I know it's double speak.
I get that,
No,
Because
okay,
that's-
thank you.
because that's, I guess, why I'm sort of working out whether I'm going to support the amendment or not, just thinking about it, because obviously if they say, oh yeah, we've got plans in place to do X, Y, Z, but the plans aren't great, or at the end of the day, they won't be workable, then we're going to miss out on advocacy opportunities. So I'm just weighing up. I'll listen to other debate, but I'm weighing up whether to support it, because sometimes whether you advocate for something that's already existing or not, sometimes if they have a plan in place and you get that advocacy coming in, it verifies, hey, the community want this as well. So there are those benefits as well to advocating for something that may or may not be in the pipeline, that you're putting stronger weight behind it. So that's where I'm just sitting and weighing up if I'm going to support the amendment or not, but I'll listen again to other debate. Because it can't hurt to advocate anyway.
Good, thank you.
I
Councillor
suppose
Back.
I can speak.
Yes.
Look, I understand the intent of the amendment, and look, I'm quite happy to accept it, because at the end of the day, I'm not going to be there and the CEO have something. I think they have how to advocate, but I do agree that we need to, establish what's going to be done, what's going to be done. So, I know you take this on board as a contribution from the council, and I think the main thing we need to do is advocate for our community and safety. I'm sure we can do that collectively, through Gareth and LGA and those kind of things as well.
Okay, certainly. Any further debate, Councillor Barnett?
It needs to have working before active, because that is the key. You can have plans in place, but like we've had previously with the opening and crossing, we've had one, sort of there back in the years, but because it actually wasn't a working active pedestrian crossing, so that's the key to it. You can have plans, but whether they're actually going to translate into action is a different matter. That's why was my reason that I thought that was a good purpose.
Can I just take as a question to the mover of the amendment? Is there a reason why you haven't included the word working before active pedestrian?
Well, I guess I didn't include it because I thought it didn't need to be included, and I know that doesn't sound. I know that sounds a bit smart, but given what Councillor Barnett has discussed most recently, it wouldn't bother me if we did put the word working in before active. It's okay to do so.
The difference is the mover of something whether you wouldn't be bothered or whether you actually asked the chair to seek leave of the meeting to insert. So it's a subtle difference, but it's really important to me.
Can I do the best one?
Yeah, yeah. I can see leave of the meeting because you want to insert the word working.
Yes.
Okay. And so you're going to seconder of the amendment. Are you happy to insert the word working? Definitely. Thank you. Do I seek leave of the meeting? All those in favour of including that word? You unanimously thus included. Thank you very much. Anything further, Councillor Barnett? Thank you. Any further speakers to this? Councillor Group.
No flies that time. Can I just say I'll support the motion? If we look at the word advocate as a verb, it is to publicly recommend or support. And I think this is the point, that at the moment we don't know what we're supporting or what we're recommending. And I think we need to know that in order to not look somewhat foolish in the eyes of the state government. So if we know what's working and we can support that or what's going to happen, and if we can then advocate or recommend what should happen in those spaces where it's not happening. That's really clear, I know. But the point being, I support the motion, the amendment, and I think it makes a lot of sense. And I think adds to the motion itself.
Thank you. I'll just speak briefly to the amendment. remind me of Shakespeare, to be or not to be. There are currently installed active pedestrian crossing gates and signal lights at Islington, in North Adelaide, at Ovingham, that don't operate. Hence, Councillor Barnett's point, it's in her notes, maybe not expressed that clearly, but I heard it. The difficulty here is, we don't know whether the government actually want to send a signal wire to those things or not. That's the thing, we just don't know. There's no point having a gate there if you can't get a signal to it.
Yeah.
We had the presentation from the Ovingham project managers here the other day, and I heard them quite clearly say the new active pedestrian crossing gate will be actively working where the disability crossing is enabled, which is the one under the bridge, because we've picked up the signal wire from the old crossing. Okay, so we've got a signal to the little box that sends it, but the north one, no, that's inactive. What is that about? I think now the amendments can sort it out, and I'm quite happy to support it. The word working is very, very important. As Councillor Barnett made that point again. Just having a gate there, not going to save anyone's life. Right? The difference is the gate's in place, you cannot get into the rail corridor. Okay. There was a cyclist who was hit by the train in North Adelaide Station only 2 weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago. There are active pedestrian gates on that crossing that have not been signalised. Right? If they had, cyclists could have been hit. So the question for me is, Minister, hello, why are you spending half the money, our taxpayers' money, that can't be used to save lives? Makes no sense at all. What's the whole? I think so. Now it works both ways. Tell us what's done and working. Tell us what you can do about the stuff that's not working. I think it's a classic example of bureaucratic silliness, in my view. But it's my opinion. Just take it as an opinion. Thank you. I think that concludes debate on the amendment. There's no summing up, so I'll take a vote on that. All those in favour? Against, it is carried unanimously. And now becomes part of the motion. Any further debate on the motion? No. Councillor Barnett, you should sum up.
No, I'm glad that you picked up on one of the most important points. And the other thing is that it gives a very false and wrong impression if there is a crossing there, whether you're a pedestrian, a cyclist, or somebody in a wheelchair, that you think that you're going to be protected, you know, and maybe you're not. So I think we've covered all our positions then, assumptions. I commend it to you.
Thank you. That concludes the debate. All those in favour? Against, it is carried unanimously. Okay. All right, item 14.2, notice of motion on heritage signage recommendations on page 108. Councillor Backer, are you still happy to move?
Yes, I would like to. So I'd like to move that a report be presented to the 23rd of August council meeting on the status for the heritage signs project. That includes time frames for completion. Now, I acknowledge that the CEO has made a comment, and the reason this has come to a council meeting is that I've been chasing this for over 2 years, and because it actually backs up further work we've done. So we've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars over the last few years and consulting with our community on what is character, what do we love, what are we trying to protect, and we can't actually point to it and say that's what we love, that's what we want to protect. The former directors, I think it was a project that hovered over planning and infrastructure. There didn't seem to be an accountability. Black street signs were put in at someone's idea, not consulting with the elected member body. Obviously, you can't consult on everything, but the result we got is that some people got black street signs and some people got white, and people have no idea why. So the request was made with the previous, we pushed really hard to get a heritage workshop, because that was something else that was supposed to come back and hadn't done. So the then CEO, Alison Hancock, at that workshop instructed the two directors basically just to get on with it. And unfortunately, though we've had a turnover of staff and CEOs, that shouldn't be a reason why we can't deliver something as important as this to the community. So it's not, people say, oh, it's just a small project. It's actually what it is. So all the work we've done behind that, all the submissions we've made, it really makes it clear to the community, we can point to that, get it done. So in doing this motion, and I think through the chair to the CEO, it's not to say that this update isn't appreciated. Again, there's been emails that could have substantiated that beforehand. However, I think what this does, it makes it on the agenda, and someone accountable to bring back what the update is at the next meeting, because I think it would be a very sad thing if it wasn't delivered in this term. And I think it's something in 150 years we really like to see done. So I would encourage people to support motion.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Councillor Barnett.
Yes, to say that it was a disappointing outcome initially. Particularly when the Prospect Local History Group had activated this to happen and had given suggestions. And then for members of the community to come to some of us and say, oh, what's that black sign mean? Was very disappointing. So I hope we can correct that and get this how it was meant to be. Indication that it's a heritage piece.
Thank you. Any further speakers?
Other than just, well, I'll just back it up to say, obviously glad CEO's restructures coming together. We can put someone accountable to delivering this, but this is just sort of, I guess, on reflection of the last few years, just, I guess, one of many things that have been delayed, not done properly, no accountability. So I'm glad that you've got your team now behind you, and we've already seen many examples of where the CEO has brought accountability to this chamber, and honesty and transparency. We know if we can give you something, we trust that you'll bring it back and do that. So I'm looking forward to the way forward. Obviously, the past is the past, and it is very, it was unacceptable and disappointing. But obviously, we've got our way forward now, and I guess through this motion, which I will support, it does make that accountable as well.
Thank you. Any further debate? And just from the chair, I agree with the comments made. It's been pretty frustrating for something that's so simple and so small. It was embarrassing to have our team turn up on my street corner while I was outside, pulling out the signpost, which I'm on a corner, to put in a black one. And I said, what's that about? Not quite sure. I think it's something to do with heritage. I've gone, right. Okay. Well, there's a heritage area at the end of the street, the other end of the street, but it's not the whole street. And the staff went, oh, looked up the map and said, you're right. There's only one Carter Street sign on the back of the ute. It'd have to go to the other end of the street. It's just like, you've got to be kidding me. I didn't even know what this was about. And see, I know it was you're doing, and you've heard, you know, this. It's silly. It's just silly. So I understand that the Liberty members who want to have this on the public record as to what's going on. I've been asked when I'm getting my Black Street sign because they look kind of sexy.
They do.
And obviously, we've got no intention of rolling out Black Street signs anywhere unless you are a heritage conservation zone. So it's a small thing, but I think it is important to make you CEO and your team accountable for these initiatives. And perhaps the report doesn't need to be long. If the sign's installed, that'd be great. We've got a photo of one in the report. And perhaps some suggestions around how this doesn't happen again. It's such a small thing. I'm all in favour, by the way, of us signposting stuff that's great about our city. I've suggested before we have an environmental initiative like it was Sud that was gone in, like at the Hunt or the one going in Davies, that we whack a sign in, we say, isn't this good? Brought to you by City of Prospect. I'm all in favour of it. So I encourage you to keep thinking these ideas, but a bit more consultation and application would be terrific. Any further debate on this item? Councillor De Back, you wish to sum up?
Look, I'm just to compare what was just said. It doesn't have to be a large report. It's just really just to make sure it's an updated report. Hopefully, they'll be installed by that point, if not with a time frame of when they are. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the debate. All those in favour? Against this, carried unanimously. Thank you. And Councillor De Backer, you are still on the stage for item 14.3.
Yep.
Notice of motion on street sweeping recommendations at page 109.
Yes, so I'd like to move that the council publish a 2022 calendar of the City of Prospect street sweeping calendar, sample to the link provided below and publicised on our website, to communicate the current budgeted service levels. So look, I'm open to different wording, but I'll just explain the rationale. At the moment, we've actually not, if you go to the street sweeping site on our website, it doesn't actually say when your street is being swept and how often it's being swept. It doesn't actually establish the service levels. We do have service levels. Back in 2015, there were service levels written that says every 6 to 8 weeks, and we also have a responsive. And I think what's happened is we do the responsive. I could be wrong, but I haven't seen how we're doing that. So how are we assessing that streets are being swept? And I know Councillor Harris has also raised this in the past, as correspondence previously from Councillor Harris. And when we talk about street sweeping, you might say, okay, it doesn't make sense to sweep a street, say that 3 times, sweep a street if it's not dirty or it's the wrong time of year, and I get that. However, we get all our bins collected, whether we've got something in it or not. And when I think about street sweeping, it's also a chance to assess the street. So if it was a sweep and snap, like it might be snapping pictures of things, there might be a missing tree, there might be a paver that's amiss or whatever. If we're actually going down a street, okay, 6 to 8 weeks, maybe the acceptable service level is as long as 12 weeks. But I don't know what that is. We've got a service level in place that says 6 to 8 weeks, but that's not available for our community on the website. They don't know what they're getting for their money. There's probably an internal document. What I'd like to see is something visible for the community. So when they complain to me about, look, no one's swept my street, I can say, look, this is the service level that we've agreed to, and we can find out when this street was last swept. And instead of doing a just in time, we can actually say, well, not say hold your horses, but look, we understand it's going to be swept within the next 4 weeks, so it'll be done then. Instead of doing the responsive thing, because I think responsive can also be a service level. It's also hard to meet because you might have particular people that expect a certain level of service and know that's the way that they get that. So I guess I just want to establish a service level across the whole city that's communicated on the website. Walkerville's got a really good 1-page calendar. So I'd like to hear other legislators.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a second? Councillor Richard.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And funny enough, I actually seen Walkervilles before because I noticed that some that you're bringing this tonight. I agree, and it's also about, I guess, keeping that service standard accountable. And if people can look on the street, it actually reduces the amount of, you might even find it reduces the amount of correspondence the council get, and instead of on that responsive, because if they contact us, or they can go jump on the website and say, hey, my street was swept on this particular week. I know it's due to be done again here. I don't need to pass the council. Well, pass the council was not done by then, but at least there's accountability. So I fully support that. And thanks to the CEO as well for the update. And I take note too where the CEO said some operational challenges need to be compared when comparing sort of our basically the way we do it versus Walkerville, because obviously Walkerville are part of I guess large scale service for 3 council areas. Well, maybe too, we need to look at if we're finding it difficult, do we need to, this will be part of a broader conversation later, but is there the opportunity to get to that point through sharing this particular service with other councils? Could that save us money? I don't know, I don't have those answers, but I'm obviously when we've gone through budget discussions, maybe there'll be a way that we can share some of these services in the future with other councils and save money. Who knows? But I do think the community overall expect that they'll know when their street's going to be swept next and when it's been previously done, and they should be able to easily find that. So I support the intent of the motion.
Thank you. Further speakers, Councillor Deputy Mayor.
And you can tell when the street's been swept because there's a curvy line up and down the street because it's dodged cars which are parked every 5 metres. So it almost seems like a waste of time under that circumstance to sweep the streets anyway, because it's only doing 50% of the intended area, and I think that's only going to be worse as more and more cars fill up the area and more people own cars, etc., etc. So we're kind of not getting a lot of bang for our buck. So I don't know. This seems to be a point that we should discuss a little bit more holistically. I'm happy to support the motion, but I don't think this should be the end. It's obviously key person risk if we have one expert and one machine. Yeah, support the motion, but it seems like this should be part of a broader discussion about service level reviews, and I'm sure that will be taken on board by the CEO, and that will come to us at some point down the track.
Thank you, councillor Group.
Yeah, look, I'm just struggling with this one a little bit. I think the intent is right, but what I've heard is two distinct conversations. One is around the service level, which I would support being up there, which is your street will get swept every X amount of weeks, versus here's a calendar of when your street is going to be swept. Because I think we're setting ourselves up for failure automatically since that calendar goes up.
Councillor Group is.
Thank you. So I'm struggling it because the motion clearly says calendar, and so an amendment wouldn't work because it's altering the intent of the motion. So I'm not going to put an amendment up, but so I think the service level, the service standard is good, and I would certainly support that. I think too, I don't know how good our data is on things like berry season, where that street gets done 4 times in a week, 4 times in a month, versus non-berry season where it gets done once every 3 months or whatever it might be, because that would have to be taken into account into a calendar. Because if the calendar uses a very binary system of every 8 weeks you're going to get swept, we know that's never going to happen because of those other factors, storms, floods, block gutters, whatever it might be. So, so on the basis of what it is, and I won't support it, but I do accept that there is a good reason to put up a service standard to the onto the website, onto our website, so people know that it is every X amount of weeks. But to Deputy Mayor's point, there's probably a bit more conversation that needs to go behind that as well. All credit to Warrnambool, though. I think it's great they put a calendar up. I'd be interested to know how accurate it is. I think we had a Warrnambool resident that could tell us how accurate it is, because I think it would just be interesting to know whether actually they do live and die by that calendar, or whether it's purely a guide. It does say on the bottom, of that calendar, it is a bit of a guide and it's indicative only. And so I do wonder the value of it, given that you're almost contradicting the fact that you have the calendar in the first place by the footnote at the bottom of it. So that's where I'm at, but happy to convince otherwise.
Thank you. Further speakers? Councillor Barnett.
I think anything that we can do that makes our services visible, particularly to new residents. We're still, I don't know how many more years I'll be here before we get a new residents guide online. Basically, all we sort of publish is some of our works that are happening, and occasionally, and whatever. So, I think you can have a guide and just put the proviso, like we have to submit some things that we do like this, that it could change seasonally, or due to storms or something like that. I think people then generally understand that, because it's red in my area, it's not going to necessarily, be that, because there might be storms, there might be very rough, whatever. But I think we could work it so at least it's something there, it's visible. If you're a new resident that's moved in, we've got some idea. If not, you can find out more information.
Thank you. Further debate?
I can just ask a brief question, if possible. I'll have spoken to it.
Yes. Quick question.
If correspondence comes into council at the moment from residents asking when is my street next to be done, what's the response we broadly that we give to people without this at the moment?
Through you, Mayor Lachlan, I can take that on notice, but I do have access to our knowledge base, so if you talk about yourselves.
No, take it on notice.
But we'll take it on notice.
Yeah.
The type of response they're giving at the moment.
Yeah. Generally, it's on. There's a response there, as the councillor Baker spoke about before. From my knowledge, if you bring up there's a big issue, then team will get there if it's a problem. If not, that'll be with the CEO advisors herself. So I'll just speak to the motion briefly. And I'm inclined to support it, although it does create some logistics challenges for the staff. I'm inclined to support it because I like staff to bring those challenges back to us to determine whether we agree with them or not. I don't know what the service standard is at the moment for street sweeping. I'd like to know, because I'd like to know what to tell residents. I like the way Walkerville's done their calendar. It's pretty non-committal, but you can read from it. Oh, they'll probably be swept every month or two. Okay, I get that. Not once a year. So you can read that into it straight away. You can also read into it that things might change. And I think Councillor Barnett spoke quite rightly, berry season and storms, you can expect that the sweeper will go where it's needed most. But it also has other information on there, such as please don't sweep your stuff onto our street. And some residents do that, thinking that the sweeper is magically going to detect that their leaf load is high and there's a set of scales in the curb line or something. So it just doesn't happen, of course. Ideally, we get this to the point where people would know that the street sweepers are coming down their street, and to go to Deputy Mayor's point, they would move their cars so that their curb line gets swept. And that's what I'd like to know ultimately is give me some idea, and I'll do my best to make my tenants in our cars shift to the other side of the road or somewhere else, because it never gets swept under our cars. But we've got no idea when the sweeper's coming. And furthermore, I'd like to know what our service standard is in the main roads, because as a cyclist, often the bike lanes are pretty ordinary with, you know, gravel and broken glass and leaves and twigs and dead cyclists and other things. And also running through the traffic with intersections going into other councils, and both sweepers seem to stop. So there's often a Himalayan mountain range of debris that rides through at the actual traffic lit intersection. So I think it's a good motion in the sense it'll force us to get our act together with this. We're not going to publish it unless we're happy with it, and it will declare what our service standard is, which is something we should know. I know there'll be some disclaimers, but at least it'll be something at the start. If the CEO comes back to us saying it's impossible, we can't guarantee anything, well, I think that's another discussion we should have about why we can't guarantee anything. That would be interesting too. So I'm inclined to support it because of what it will lead to on the way to achieving the outcome. Okay, any further debate on this one? Councillor DeBacker, you wish to sum up?
Yeah, look, following on from Ned's comments, I think it is a start, and it's communicating where services are, and they're obviously behind the scenes, but we don't know what they are, and that's always challenging. And I think it also is a good way to set expectations, because sometimes people expect that these work every week, and that's not the reality. So now it says publish the 2022 calendar. It doesn't say by when. So I think that also gives the CEO plenty. Exactly, he's got till December. So I think there's probably discussions or workshops or whatever that could be had between now and then with us or then with council or whatever. That I think it's a good aspiration. So I encourage you to support the motion.
Thank you. That concludes debate. All those in favour? Against? It is carried. Okay, item 15, questions with notice there are nil registered. Item 16, confidential items. We have two. The recommendation is on page 111 for the order to exclude the public. Somebody happy to move that way? Sorry, the topic local government reforms, LGA training standard consultation. Somebody happy to move the order to exclude? Yeah. Yes, Councillor Rupert, we should discuss it. No. Do I have a seconder? Deputy Mayor, you should speak.
No, thanks.
Through the debate. All those in favour? Yes, is carried unanimously. And we will now exclude all the public. I never like going to confidence, but it seems particularly silly when there's actually no one here to exclude.
Can we turn the video off?
We will do instead. She's only just got it on, so see you folks. Catch you on the summary.